بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن اتبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. This is the second part of the discussion about Riyadh Muslims' claims about the meaning of La ilaha illallah. In this part, we're going to analyze the ayat that state إن الحكم إلا لله, commonly translated as rulership is only for Allah. Riyadh claims that these ayat prove the meaning of La ilaha illallah being sovereignty is only for Allah. Riyadh says,
in his first point, Sajid seems to have a problem with my definition of La ilaha illallah. And the reason he has a problem is because I define this statement as Allah being the only sovereign. And the evidence that I use for that is a clear-cut verse in the Quran, where Allah says, Inil hukmu illa lillah. Sovereignty is only for Allah. But you know what? I'm actually going to take it a step further and show you, using an authentic, classical Arabic dictionary, that sovereignty is much more befitting to describe La ilaha illallah than worship. So listen.
Please note, I would like to point out that Riyadh explicitly states that 1. The definition of La ilaha illallah is that Allah is the only sovereign. Second, he states that sovereignty is much more befitting to define La ilaha illallah than worship. Review what I have said in part 1 about his claims in the dictionary. The word of Allah, Inil hukmu illa lillah. First of all, this is not one entire ayah. This sentence comes 3 times in the Quran within 3 different longer ayat, i.e. a context that our man Riyadh has omitted. Surah Al-An'am, ayah 56 and 57. قل إني نهيت أن أعبد الذين تدعون من دون الله قل لا أتبع أهواءكم قد ضللت إذا وما أنا من المهتدين. Say, I have been forbidden to worship those who you call upon besides Allah. Say, I will not follow your hawa, inclinations, whims, for I would then have gone astray and I will not be of the rightly guided. قل إني على بينة من ربي وكذبتم به ما عندي ما تستعجلون به إن الحكم إلا لله يقص الحق وهو خير الفاصلين. Say, indeed, I am on clear evidence from my Lord, and you have denied it. I do not have that for which you are trying to haste. The hukam, ruling, decision, decree, is only for Allah. He relates the truth, and He is the best of judges. Remarks. First, we see that the context is the rebuttal of idol worshipping, and these idols are described as being called upon. قل إني نهيت أن أعبد الذين تدعون من دون الله. لا إله إلا الله إني نهيت أن أعبد الذين تدعون من دون الله. La ilaha illallah, I have been forbidden to worship those who you call upon besides Allah. Second, unlike many ayat of the Quran, the statement in al-hukmu illa lillah, ruling is only for Allah, isn't paraphrasing La ilaha illallah. Like for example, where Allah relates how the messengers address their people saying, يا قوم اعبدوا الله ما لكم من إله غيره. O my people, worship Allah. You do not have any deity besides Him. لا إله إلا الله يا قومي اعبدوا الله ما لكم من إله غيره. More on this later. Third, the statement in al-hukmu illa lillah, ruling is only for Allah, comes as a response to the polytheists challenging the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, asking him to bring the torment of Allah upon them if he is truthful. Let's see what the scholars of tafseer have to explain on this. الإمام الطبري قال الإمام الطبري رحمه الله تعالى: فمعنى الكلام إذن ما الحكم فيما تستعجلون به أيها المشركون من عذاب الله فيما بيني وبينكم إلا لله الذي لا يجور في حكمه بيده الخلق والأمر يقضي الحق بيني وبينكم وهو خير الفاصلين بيننا بقضائه وحكمه. At-Tabari says, so this means the hukm, ruling, decree, O polytheists, about the punishment of Allah upon you for what has happened between us is only for Allah to decide. The one who is never unfair in his hukm. In his hand is the power to create and decree. He will judge right between us, and he is the best one to make a judgment. الحافظ ابن كثير رحمه الله تعالى قال ابن كثير رحمه الله تعالى ما عندي ما تستعجلون به. The word of Allah, I do not have what you are hastening for. أي من العذاب, أي from the punishment of Allah. إن الحكم إلا لله, hukm, decree is only for Allah. أي إنما يرجع أمر ذلك إلى الله. إن شاء عجل لكم ما سألتموه من ذلك وإن شاء أنظركم وأجلكم. I, deciding this matter of torment and punishment is only up to Allah. If He wants, He will hasten that what you are asking for, and if He wants, He will delay it. We see from the context of this ayah, as well as what is explicitly mentioned in this tafseer, that hukm in this ayah is about decree, as in qadar. The fact that Allah is the only one who makes things happen and nothing can happen except by His will. It is not about dominion, obedience, making laws, sovereignty being for Allah alone. Surah Yusuf. The same sentence reoccurs twice in Surah Yusuf in two different ayat. The first one is ayah 40. ما تعبدون من دونه إلا أسماء سميتموها أنتم وآباؤكم ما أنزل الله بها من سلطان إن الحكم إلا لله أمر ألا تعبدوا إلا إياه ذلك الدين القيم ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون. You worship not besides Him except mere names that you and your fathers have come up with. Allah hasn't sent down any authority about these. Hukm, ruling decree, is for none but Allah. He has commanded you that you worship none except Him. That is the straight religion, but most of the people do not know. This is the ayah that Riyadh has put on his screen during his video, but he only quoted the part in il hukmu illa lillah. Note: once again, from the context of the ayah itself, we see that it comes as a rebuttal of idol worship and the reaffirmation that Allah only should be worshipped. The statement, ruling is only for Allah, is not what Yusuf is calling them to. Rather, this statement comes as a foundation to make the case for the message that follows from it. He ordered you to worship none but Him. This is the methodology of the Quran in explaining Tawheed. Number one, expose the idols for what they are, statues or mere names that you and your forefathers have come up with. Number two, you and me agree that Allah is the one who created us and handles our affairs. Number three, so let us give Him what He deserves, which is that we worship none but Him. Many ayat in the Quran prove that this is how Allah has explained Tawheed to us, and this is what we have to understand from it. Al-Imam al-Tabari قال الإمام الطبري رحمه الله تعالى قوله إن الحكم إلا لله أمر أن لا تعبدوا إلا إياه. Al-Imam al-Tabari says about the word of Allah, ruling and decree is only for Allah. He ordered you that you should worship none but Him. يقول هو الذي أمر أن لا تعبدوا أنتم وجميع خلقه إلا الله الذي له الألوهية والعبادة خالصة دون كل ما سواه من الأشياء. He is the one that you and all His creation worship none but Allah, the one that deserves worship purely to Himself without anything along with Him. وقوله ذلك الدين القيم, and the word of Allah, this is the straight religion. يقول هذا الذي دعوتكما إليه من البراءة من عبادة ما سوى الله من الأوثان. Yusuf says, this is what I call you to. Free yourselves from the worship of idols and anything other than Allah. وأن تخلص العبادة لله الواحد القهار, and that you make your worship purely for Allah. Yusuf is not calling them to affirm that sovereignty or dominion is only for Allah, and based on that refuse any king or sovereignty from this dunya. The ayah tells us to abandon idols because all is in the hands of Allah, so we should worship none but Him. This is the straight religion. The ayah is not about sovereignty, laws, kings, bay'ah, etc. The third ayah is again in Surah Yusuf, ayah 67. قال يا بني لا تدخلوا من باب واحد وادخلوا من أبواب متفرقة وما أغني عنكم من الله من شيء إن الحكم إلا لله عليه توكلت عليه فليتوكل المتوكلون. And he said, O my sons, do not enter from one gate, but enter from different gates, and I cannot avail you against the decree of Allah at all. The decision is only for Allah. إن الحكم إلا لله. Upon Him I have relied, and upon Him the people of tawakkul must rely. قال الإمام الطبري, the word of Allah, I cannot avail you against the decree of Allah at all. معناه إن كان الله قضى فيكم قضاء فيصيبكم مجتمعين كنتم أو متفرقين فإن المقدور كائن والحذر لا ينفع مع القدر. Meaning that if Allah has decreed something to happen to you, that thing will happen whether you be in a group or whether you be split up individually, because the decree of Allah always takes place, no matter what precautions you might take. إن الحكم إلا لله. Decree is for none but Allah, or decision is only for Allah. هذا تفويض يعقوب أموره إلى الله. With this sentence, Yaqub left his matters up with Allah. عليه توكلت اعتمدت وعليه فليتوكل المتوكلون. Upon Him I have relied, and upon Him the people of tawakkul must rely. Once again, we see that this ayah is about qadar, and Yaqub is saying in al-hukmu illa lillah as an introduction to submitting to qadar. If Allah wills it this way, I shall accept it. He has tawakkul, leaves his matters up to Allah. He is the one who should decide for us, and we have to accept it. And this is a very high level of faith. Let's now take a minute and think about the tafseer of sovereignty or dominion is only for Allah. Our man Riyadh claimed that giving bay'ah to King Charles equals to say La ilaha illa King Charles, because Tawheed means no sovereignty except for Allah. Riyadh, what do you say about the story of Yusuf in Surah Yusuf, where the ayah that you quoted and put on your screen is from? Allah informs us of the reaction of the king after Yusuf interprets the dream and advises on how to prepare. وَقَالَ الْمَلِكُ ائْتُونِي بِهِ أستخلصه لنفسي فلما كلمه قال إنك اليوم لدينا مكين أمين. And the king said, bring him to me, I will appoint him exclusively for myself. And when he spoke to him, he said, indeed, you are today established in position and trusted. Al-Imam al-Baghawi rahimahullah ta'ala says the meaning of established in position is al-jah, which means a position of influence and power. The sentence in the word of Allah, astakhlishu li nafsi, I will appoint him exclusively to myself. Ibn Kathir explains, I will make him part of my inner circle and council. Bay'ah is not explicitly mentioned in the ayah, but being in the inner circle of a king necessarily requires loyalty and definitely acceptance and affirmation that the king has some form of dominion, sovereignty, rulership, etc. When Yusuf executed his plot to get hold of his brother, Allah tells us, مَا كَانَ لِيَأْخُذَ أَخَاهُ فِي دِينِ الْمَلِكِ. He could not have taken his brother within the deen, religion of the king, except that Allah willed. Ibn Kathir narrates about the meaning of Deenul Malik, the religion of the king, saying, the hukam, rulership of the king. And this king was a kafir. Al-Baghawi narrates the same from a number of Salaf and adds to it, narrating from Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhuma, sultanuhu, meaning his authority. This proves that Yusuf was working under, serving and abiding by the laws and regulations of a kafir king. If the Tawheed that Allah has sent all His messengers with and is the common foundation and goal of every legislation meant what Riyadh says, Yusuf could not have been in this position.